Welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast with your host, Lorna Poole, sharing the secrets to creating wealth, investing, and that all-important money mindset. To find out more and accelerate your journey to financial freedom, head on over to www.lornapoole.com to get started. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Financial Freedom Podcast. Kids, it's really important that we teach them very early on how to look after their money, how to create financial freedom in their lives, how to buy stocks, and how to, set up themselves so that, a lot of adults are learning this at a very late stage. So wouldn't it be amazing if we could start at kids, okay? And my guest expert today is author J.J Wenrich, and he is a certified financial planner, educational speaker, financial coach who resides in Clemente, California. He's a 20-year investment veteran and a dad with a heart for education and financial literacy. His family today is the foundation of the lessons taught on educating kids and grown-ups about healthy financial habits and teaching kids how to invest, how to buy stocks. Thank you, JJ. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here today.
I know myself personally, I wish somebody had shown me when I was young what to do, because you hear all the time that people that are brought up in families where anyone's, even sports, they were doing it in childhood, and we learn best when we're at our youngest.
Yeah, and we learn best in the home. If it's
in the home, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, it makes such a difference to start early, and if it's part of your upbringing and your culture, it makes all the difference. But part of what I had in mind when I started building this platform and writing this book was that if it didn't start in your home and if it doesn't come naturally to you, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. That my goal for all those homes where it's not second nature, where mom and dad don't know how to talk to their kids, to try to give them a way to make it easy to talk to their kids, because it is so important.
Exactly. And I'm, you probably don't know this, I'm a mom of a 2-year-old, and I have this Financial Freedom podcast. I'm learning myself, and I absolutely want to teach my kids. So I'm delighted to have you here.
Well, great. This should be fun.
So, as you say, you're talking to parents who don't perhaps know, and how do they give that gift to their kids? So let's go there. So how do we teach our kids, or how do we go about it, or where should we start? When should we start?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming to try to think, okay, I want to teach my kids to be financially literate. Where do I even go? With anything, start with the very basics. If you want to learn how to run, you should probably learn how to crawl and walk first. And so where I tell people to go is just make it really simple and talk to your kids about money while you're going about your everyday lives. And it doesn't have to be anything complex or profound. It's just as simple as, if you're shopping for groceries, talk about how much things cost. Or if your kids want a treat, or if their whole world is Pokemon cards or whatever it is, talk to them about how much things cost, because then they'll start to get a sense for scale, and that, okay, if I want something good, I'm going to need this much money to buy it. And that baseline really will carry with them forever. Because I think back to when I was a kid, one of my first transactions that I remember was I grew up in this tiny little town in Kansas, in the middle of the United States. And we actually had a general store, and it was called the General Store. Mm-hmm. It literally looked like something out of the Old West, and it's not there anymore. But I'd walked up there and I threw a handful of change on the counter, and I said, I want these 2 candy bars. And the guy said, well, that's not quite enough. You'll need a little bit more. So I threw some more change up there. And then eventually he gave me a little bit back and said, all right, it's 60 cents for 2 candy bars. And so for my whole life, that's how I think about inflation is, all right, well, a candy bar used to be 30 cents and now it's, it's $1.50 or $1, depending on where you're buying it. So just talking about money gives you that baseline to start from. And then from there, you talk about businesses, you talk about things that you see, but if there's money or there's business involved in something and you're with your kids, mention it to them.
Things like a business you're involved in. Yeah.
So, I mean, for example, that I like to go to is restaurants. If you're at a restaurant and it's busy and there's a line out the door, talk about, hey, these guys are doing pretty good business. And what does that mean? And maybe that particular place that you're at that's busy, that's doing good business, whether it be a restaurant or a store or whatever, maybe it's privately owned, maybe it's a mom and pop, but maybe it's a big company that you can actually invest in. And that's how the conversation starts is, look, some of these places where we go and we spend our money, some of them you can be an owner and it's really simple to be an owner. It's as simple as opening up a stock account.
I can't remember. It was only yesterday or something. I had read it somewhere or whatever, but it was this guy and he was learning to invest. And as a kid, he loved McDonald's. And the parent had said to him, oh, McDonald's is a public company, and he bought a share in McDonald's and it went on to soar. And he said, that's my memory of the first time I invested. And I just thought, oh, wow, okay. And that's just like what you're talking about, just going into place saying, this is a public company or this is private. Oh, look, there's loads of people going out the door. It looks like it's making a profit. Like kind of planting the seed in their head.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's just that little thing. You're starting to give them the language. You're starting to think like a business owner. And I deal with financial professionals all the time. And I'll tell you, there's nothing they love more than a teenager or a young person that's really engaged in what's going on in the world. And they'll ask them questions about, all right, well, what are your friends buying? What do you guys like? And, they're looking for stock ideas. And I'm not that dissimilar. I'm always asking my kids, well, what's hot right now? And it's amazing how they've got a pulse for the marketplace. And a lot of times, people, when they invest, they think it has to be complicated. But if you make it simple, your success is better if you buy things like a McDonald's that or with my kids, they're all sitting around with their cousins and every one of them had an Apple device. And so when they bought their first stock, 2 of the 3 bought Apple because they felt like, well, this isn't going away anytime soon. This seems to be a pretty good business they've got going.
Yes, and you're more invested when something's familiar or you know it or you're excited about it.
Yep, absolutely.
As a child, yes. And what about, do you teach them the basics of managing money before they invest? Or just, debt, all that kind of stuff? What do you say to all that? Like, there's so many elements to getting it right. I know, I agree, keep it simple, but there's not getting into debt. There's managing your money so you have the money to invest. What do you say about all that?
No, I'm glad you bring that up because I get excited talking about stocks, and really you have to start with not stocks. You have to start with just saving. And the most important rule in investing is that you have to have your emergency fund. You have to have your financial house in order before you can start buying long-term assets like stocks. So I would say, long-term assets for long-term goals, short-term assets for short-term goals, and your first goal should be your cash reserve. So when it comes to talking about managing the money and the cash flow, it's so imperative that before you invest, you have to invest in yourself and your savings account, because you can't handle the movement you're going to have in the stock market in terms of the ups and downs, especially the downs. Everybody can handle the ups, but it's the downs that you got to worry about. You can't ride that out if you need that money for something in 6 months. If you're, a broken water heater away from having to dig into your stock account, well, then you shouldn't be buying stocks yet. You should have your emergency fund saved up. And so the first step is figuring out how to manage your day-to-day finances so that you can save money. With kids, it's they don't have the expenses that grown-ups do. It's the same conversation with kids as it is with adults. It's about managing the ins and outs. But with kids, it's managing their wants. They don't need typically to spend a whole lot, but they want to spend all of their money. And so it's managing the psychology of delayed gratification and being aware of how much you have versus how much you can spend. And then the incentive of, if we can save up some money, then you can really do some powerful things with your finances and with your life. It gives you that, that financial freedom that you talk about on your show. It gives you the freedom to help others, to spend your time how you want with who you want. But it all starts with managing your, what you want right in front of you day to day. And there's a lot of things we think we need, but really we don't need them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what's a suggestion to a kid? Because, is a bank in a typical bank, everybody hears that a bank is not a good place to put your money. For a kid, where do you put the money? And how much percentage are you saying here? Look, save this. Okay, if you want this, you can spend this little amount here, or whatever that is. Like, how do you? What does that look like?
So the way I did it with my kids, and this is how I would recommend you approach it as well, is we had them save their first bit of savings at the bank. It's certainly going to depend on where you are in the world, where you what your banking situation looks like. But where we were at, we were perfectly comfortable going to a local bank and opened up a children's account. But that really started, I need to back up. That really started after I had challenged them to save. So I guess I kind of tricked them into saving. I saw that they were spending all their money, and they were pretty young. So I have 3 kids. They are right now they're 12, 13, 14. But this started when they were 3, 4, and 5. I noticed that they would spend anything they had on candy and toys because that's what kids do. And I said, you know what, if you guys can save your birthday money, your holiday money, we just started to pay an allowance around then. If you can save your money, and if you save $500, then I'll match it. And it was going to take them a few years to save that money, I knew, because they weren't, we're not getting allowance and gifts at that high of a level. It was going to take them some work to get there. And over time, and that kind of gave them the incentive, Dad's going to give us $500 and then we'll have $1,000. Over time, they were a little more focused because of that. But I eventually said, hey, you're not going to just have $500 to spend. I'm going to give you $500 to invest. And I don't know that was my idea when I initially thought it up. I think I just was going with the flow and off the top of my head. But over time, the thought of, oh man, I can't just give these kids money to blow. I
think that's parents' fear, that maybe you spend all these years teaching them, or, they come out at 18 and maybe they've got quite a bit of money up, but will they blow it, And I know that's another conversation. I'm skipping things here and something else to ask you. But I love the incentive of, saying to them, save 500 and I'll match it, because that gives them a reason. Like, it's very hard to do something without a motive, right?
Right. And it doesn't have to be on that grand of a scale, $500. Maybe it's, I want us to get through the summer without you blowing all your money. If you can save up $100 by the end of the summer, I'll give you 50 or what. I mean, your situation.
Yeah, so they learn to multiply it. Yeah, I think that's huge.
And what you find is if they've worked for the money, if they've really, had to delay their gratification to save it, they're probably less inclined to blow it at some point, because it means a little more to them than if you'd have just handed it to them one day.
I agree. And what about, you talked about allowance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, as they get older, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. Do you have them help out around the house to get money, or like what way do you work out the allowance thing so that they kind of feel that, if they do put in a certain amount of effort, they will increase their income, say, and then they're saving it to put it into stocks to multiply it. So how do you teach them that?
Yeah, we started allowance pretty young, and we definitely tied it to chores around the house. I mean, as early as they could help us, even if it wasn't help, we were trying to get them to try to help, and definitely let them know that this is how you get your money. And there's times where we if the effort wasn't there and we didn't feel like reminding them as they got older, then we just wouldn't pay it for a while. And eventually they'd say, hey, I need money for something. And suddenly they were interested in helping a little more. Mm-hmm. So we tie it to chores and just helping around the house. And all three kids have their own routine each day that they need to check off their list of things to do to help out. And not every chore around the house gets an allowance, because part of it's just being a good citizen in the house.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Not paying you for every time I need help.
Yeah.
And I've known to throw some compensation at various activities. If we're at the skate park, for example, because we like to go to the skate park and ride our skateboards, and I see they're just really pushing themselves. I might say, hey, I'll give you $5 if you can land this trick that you've never done. And I don't do that very often, but at times I'll do that. And it's I guess my point is figure out a way to incent them. If you're so busy and kids just have so many activities that there's not a lot of work around the house that they can do, then find a way to get them to go beyond what they might do otherwise and use it as a motivation.
And to the investing part of it, right? Are you, as you said earlier, you're having conversations around investing. Mm-hmm. Are they reading material? Are they just listening to you? Are they enthusiastic, or is it coming from you that, you might show them, I don't know, an index fund or investing directly in a company and a share? How are you getting them interested to do that? Or is it the fact that you invest with them and then they see that it's increasing? How do you go about that?
Yep. So initially, before they invested, I just showed them how compound interest works, and how
that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And how much better it works if you start early. And so that was part of the incentive is, look, you can set yourself up pretty nicely when you're leaving the house to have a financial base if you start now and let the interest compound. And so initially I just showed them the power of compound interest, and then showed them the companies that we had been talking about just over the course of our day to day, showed them what those stock prices had done over time, and showed them, if you bought it here and it went to there, this is how much money you would have made. And also here's how much you would have lost and what you had to ride through. So just helping them know that it was out there. And then, they don't really study it on their own. I really have to bring it up to have them want to take an interest in it.
They will thank you so much later. They don't know it now, but they will.
You always hope that, oh my gosh, I hope that he just loves it as much as I do. But it's, the best way to make them not like it is for me to really push it. So
yeah.
But I've seen other kids where they've taken an interest on their own and they really get into it just as much as any grown-up would. And that's pretty fun to see. None of mine have taken it to that level yet, but they, just because I don't want to say I force it on them, but I talk about it a lot and I do it for a living. So they're aware of it. But they don't really necessarily study it. And I guess maybe that's the point, is they've been pretty successful because they don't study it. They know that you want to buy companies that are good, that have a business that is tough to duplicate and is going to be around for a long time, and that is probably going to grow for a long time. And that's probably about as deep as they've gone. But that's, I guess, part of my point is that's enough. And for all the parents that are out there, they're like, oh, I don't know how to have this conversation with my kids. We've covered all you need to know in this podcast to at least get yourself started.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And get them thinking and having that seed planted.
JJ, we've had an amazing conversation. For anybody listening to this, are inspired for what you're saying and really do want to implement this with their kids, what's the kind of one thing you want to leave them with?
I'd say that trust yourself and trust your instincts, that you know more than you realize. And a lot of the best investments of the last 10, 20 years have been companies we all use every day. They've been hidden right in front of us. And so trust yourself and just know that you probably are a lot better at it than you ever realize. You just need to start to pay attention a little bit, and you'll start to see that these companies, they keep growing for a long time.
Wow. JJ, thank you. This has been amazing. How do we find out more about you, or how can somebody get in touch with you?
Yeah, I have, my website is teachingkidstobuystocks.com. And there you'll find information on the book that came out in May, and all of our social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. And then my email address, you're always welcome to drop me a line, is jj@teachingkidstobuystocks.com.
Great. And your book is what? Is it on Amazon, is it? Where is it?
It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and pretty much anywhere else you can buy books online.
Perfect.
Hardback and ebook version.
Thank you, JJ. This has been amazing. And thank you for being here. I really love what you share.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Remember to join us in the Private Financial Freedom Podcast Facebook group with me, your host, Lorna Poole. This is a safe haven of like-minded wealth-getting go-getters who, like you, are on their journey to creating financial freedom in their life. This is where you and I can get intimate. I can give you the support and guidance to go from where you are now to where you want to be, developing your wealth mindset and creating your financial freedom life. Join at www.facebook.com/groups The Financial Freedom Podcast. You will see the links to this on the website. It's in the show notes, or type it into the Facebook group. All you have to type in is Financial Freedom Podcast, and you will see us there. Look forward to seeing you in the group. Take care. Thank you for joining us on the Financial Freedom Podcast, to creating wealth, investing, and developing your money mindset. To get started today on your journey, head on over to www.lornapoole.com and grab your free course, 5 Steps to Breaking Free from Your Poverty Mindset and Accelerating Your Journey to Financial Freedom. See you there.